Okay, so in the first installment, we looked at how to access our electronic reading resources and looked at the reading and writing philosophy papers page. Now let's look at our first assignment, which in this case is actually linked off our syllabus as well. So I'll click over here to my syllabus in my browser and click on the complete study habits inventory. So when you click on this, it takes you to the assignments page. And there's a set of instructions, 7 instructions that tell you how to proceed through this assignment. Essentially, the study habits inventory is like a geeky Cosmo quiz. The idea is that I ask you a bunch of questions about how to study, about how to read, about how to write. Really, I'm asking you, how do you study, how do you read, and how do you write? And I want you to just answer them truthfully. You don't have to turn in the study habits inventory. You don't have to report how you answered any of the individual questions. So you should definitely just answer those questions for your own benefit as honestly as you possibly can. Now, once you answer these questions, and the questions look sort of like this, you can click on the key and see how I assign points to various answers. So let's take a look at this first question here in the study and questions section. I study course material and ask you to choose one. A, several times a week, even for short periods. B, once a week. C, only before the test. I suppose I could include D, never, right? But you'll read this question, you'll answer by choosing one of the options, and you'll move on. And once you get through each of the 3 sections, you click on the key, and the key will tell you how I assign points to various answers, which particular courses of action I consider to be best practice. Okay? So I'll give you some feedback about how effective I think rather your studying, your reading, and your writing habits are, given what I know about learning and memory, about reading comprehension, and about writing. Now, this isn't just my opinion. I give an explanation, and the explanation will basically tell you the reasons why I think some practices are more effective or better than others. Certainly, people differ in terms of their intellectual strengths and weaknesses. Some people are more verbal, some people are more visual. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer necessarily. But there are facts about how, for instance, we learn and how our memories operate that make certain techniques better and certain techniques less effective for studying to retain information. And so, for instance, in the explanation on studying here, I talk about the difference between short-term or working memory and long-term memory. And I talk about how people actually actively forget things. Their brains purposely get rid of information that they don't use. And I talk about 2 different types of long-term memory. Memory for skills and habits, and memory for facts, beliefs, experiences that we can report on. And talk about how the differences in these types of memory can really affect the best way to go about learning a skill versus a fact, to go about making sure that particular bits of information are more likely to be encoded in a long-term memory. So you go through, you read and score the answers to your questions, you read the explanations for why the points are assigned in the way that they are, and then you go to Beachboard. And on Beachboard, you're asked a bunch of questions. And the questions, some of the questions will be about your experience taking the test. For instance, I ask you to estimate how well you think you'll do. And I don't ask you to tell me what your score was, but I do ask you to tell me whether your score surprised you or not, whether you were better or worse than you thought you were, in my opinion anyway. And then you'll be asked a number of questions about the content of these explanations to sort of reinforce the information that I'm presenting to you. And hopefully you'll find this both interesting and useful as a means of understanding how you learn things, how to better read for comprehension and retention, and how to go about writing more concise, well-organized, comprehensible papers. So there's our first reading assignment. there's our first beach board quiz. Now the beach board quiz is going to have true false, multiple choice, and multiple select questions. Once you start the beach board quiz, you have to complete the beach board quiz. Once you complete and submit the quiz, it'll be automatically graded. Your score will be entered into the grade book, and you'll be given feedback about your quiz. And you won't just get information about whether or not you got a particular question right in my assessment. You'll be given feedback about why it was that you got it right or why it was that you got it wrong. So the quizzes are intended not just as an evaluative tool, but as a means to further your understanding of the material that's being covered by the quiz. So they're constructive, hopefully, and useful in nature as well as evaluative tools. So each week, you'll have a series of readings. You'll also have lectures. These first lectures have already been posted on YouTube as a playlist, and here's the link to that. You want to read the readings, you want to review the lectures, then take the quizzes, or starting on week 2, the last assignment will always be to answer the weekly written question and to submit that question. So once you finish your question, you'll put it in the Dropbox, turn it in, we'll evaluate it, it will give you a score. If your originality score is really high, you may want to go back and revise your paper to make it more original, include less things that Turnitin is found in other papers, other sources, or to make it more organized to reflect a better understanding that you've got of the material and so on. In addition to those weekly assignments, so on average 2 quizzes a week, 1 short answer, there will also be 2 extra credit assignments that are completely optional. But if you do them, you can earn points that will be added to the raw score of your beach board quizzes and thereby improve your overall grade. Again, these are completely optional. They are the same format of beach board quiz based on an external reading that you get in the regular course assignments, but they will give you extra credit points should you desire to try and earn those extra credit points. Now, each week, you'll have to complete all of the assignments, all of the beach board quizzes, and all the short writing assignments, and have those submitted by 8 p.m. on Friday of that week. So in the case of the quizzes, I'll post those quizzes on Tuesday mornings, and you need to have them done by 8 p.m. on Friday. In the case of the short answer question, I'll post it at 11 a.m. on Thursday, and you have about a day and a half to write and submit that question. And you can submit the answers to the short answer questions as many times as you like. I'll only grade the most recently submitted version. So if you think, oh wait, I can improve this, or you know, I realized that I was wrong about this, or I talked to Wallace since then, I think I want to change my answer a bit, as long as you submit that revision by 8 p.m. on Friday, I'll grade that latest version of your answer and not any of the previous ones. In addition to the assigned readings and the lectures and the quizzes, I'll also include, most weeks, some optional external electronic resources. So things that you might find interesting if you're interested in the topic that we're talking about for this week. So for instance, when we talk about divine command theory, I give you some links to articles on divine command theory. I give you some links to Americans' faith in God, right? Surveys, sociologists, studies about how religious our country really is in terms of how often people engage in religious practices, for example. When we look at civil rights, I give you a link to the text for the Bill of Rights, the full text of the Emancipation Proclamation, the Civil Rights Acts of 1866, 1871, and so on, right? So all of these resources are completely optional. You don't have to look at them at all. But if you're interested, if you want to read something else to satisfy your curiosity or something catches your eye, then those resources are available for you to use for that purpose. So each week, we're going to have those reading assignments, those quizzes and that short answer, at least after the first week. Everything will be due by 8 p.m. on Friday. So how am I going to grade the course? Well, let's see how we're doing on time here. Let's go ahead and do that in the next section. I'll talk about that in the final part to the orientation lecture.